Hello, Iterative Marketers! Welcome to the Iterative Marketing Podcast, where each week we give marketers and entrepreneurs actionable ideas, techniques, and examples to improve your marketing results. If you want notes and links to the resources discussed on the show, sign up to get them emailed to you each week at iterativemarketing.net. There you'll also find the Iterative Marketing blog and our community LinkedIn group where you can share ideas and ask questions of your fellow iterative marketers. Now let's dive into the show. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Iterative Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Robinson, and with me, as always, is the knowledgeable and, more importantly, insightful Elizabeth Aaron. How are you doing today, Elizabeth?
I'm good, Steve. Thank you for the kind words.
Always, or at least every episode.
Yes,
I'm not saying anything nice about you in between episodes.
Never.
So we're well into camping season. I haven't followed up with you. You got a new camper this year. How's that going?
It's been wonderful. You know, it's the nice thing about buying a new trailer is you spend all this money and you're like, I have to use it. So we've been really proactive about taking it out, even if it's just for the night. So it's been a lot of fun, and it's fun to get out. We love going up to the woods, and it's called dry camping. I did not know that this is what it was called. I've learned so much this year, but you just go and like park in the middle of nowhere and you don't have water or electricity, and that's what the trailer's for. So it's been a much more enjoyable camping experience for sure, especially with a toddler.
Yeah, I can imagine. Awesome. Yeah, we have not taken, at least not the 2-year-old camping, and I don't know if we're going to this year. She's a runner, and the woods are big, wide open spaces. So,
well, and you also have other extenuating circumstances because your beautiful wife is pregnant, and having been pregnant and gone camping, it is not an enjoyable experience. I do not recommend it.
We're definitely past the window for camping for this year. That's true, at least as a family. So what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about See, Think, Do, Grow, Give. And this is something that we have talked about in past podcasts multiple times. We reference it constantly when we're working with clients and talking about the iterative marketing process in our blogs. And so we thought that now would be a great time to really dive into this and introduce this concept to our listeners.
Absolutely. I know that we're probably overdue in introducing this. We've really been leaning on referring people back to Avinash Kaushik's blog post on the topic, which is still definitely worth a read. But I think today we're really going to lay out the basics of what it is and also dive a little bit into how it's applied, right?
So I think before we get too much further, though, we need to talk about what it is, because if you haven't heard, if this is your first podcast or you haven't heard us reference it, or you have and you've just been lost because we have not done a good job of explaining it, See, Think, Do, Grow, Give is a framework of consideration states that all prospects and customers have been at some point or another. And it is, because it's customer centric, it's focused on their point of view and their standpoint and what they're thinking and feeling. It aligns very well with the iterative marketing methodology. And like I said, we refer to it often. It's the backbone of how we structure our programs.
It's based on Avinash Kaushik's work, as I mentioned before, but we have made a couple of minor modifications to it. So we've taken he extends See, Think, Do to Care as the fourth stage or state, and we have expanded that out to Grow and Give in order to make it a little bit more applicable to the iterative marketing model and to the work that we've been doing. Additionally, he calls them stages, and we prefer to call them states. So along the lines of more of a state of being, right?
Yes. So we are going to just kind of give a heads up to our listeners. We're going to discuss each of the 5 states: See, Think, Do, Grow, and Give. And then we're going to wrap the podcast up by taking a closer look at See, Think, and Do, and specifically how we apply that to content and media channels.
Before we jump into See, I think there's just a couple of things that are important to note. Each one of these is a state of being that your audience is in, and your job as a marketer is to figure out which state each audience member is in and make sure that you're creating the best experience possible for that particular moment in time and reducing friction for them to move into a more desirable state.
And I think it's very important to note that your prospects will only ever be in one state at one time. They will never be in more than one state. And so when we talk about identifying, that makes it a little bit easier and sometimes a little bit harder. But we've got some tips and tricks to help identify that we'll get into a little bit later.
And finally, these states aren't linear. It's not your funnel. We're not herding or pushing people from one state to the next. We don't expect them to move in a particular order, although we would love it if they move towards purchase. The reality is that they'll be popping in and out. We'll talk more about that later as well. So without further ado, let's jump into the first state.
And to help understand and explain these and put it into context that we all can understand, we are going to borrow Avinash's example that he uses in his blog of buying a car, because it's something that we're all familiar with. We've been in the shoes, we understand the process. And so we're hoping that this is going to help make it a little clearer as we talk through these.
Well, why don't we take turns, you and me, Elizabeth, and we'll kind of go through each of the individual states. I'll take the first one, and that's C. And so C is your largest qualified audience. And by qualified, that means that they are able and willing to buy your product. And so, and that's a very important concept, because it's not everybody in the whole wide world. It is only those people who are qualified. If we come back to the car example, this would be anybody who has a driver's license and has money. And if you listen to Avinash speak on this topic, he loves to harp on the has money part, right? Because you're not qualified if you can't pay for said car. And so it's everybody in the world who has a driver's license and has money would be considered our C state if we were selling cars.
One thing you said, I want to clarify real fast. You said everyone in the world, but technically it's everyone in your target region. So if you're only serving the United States, it would only be the United States. If you're only serving Texas, then it would only be Texas. And so it really applies to you and where your target market resides.
Yes, absolutely. And there may be other qualifications that your business sets on what's a qualified prospect. And those would apply as well. And geography definitely comes into play.
And I think it's also important to note that, you talked about qualified, obviously in our definition that they have to be, have a driver's license and have the money to buy a car, but they may not necessarily be actually thinking about buying a car. They just have to be qualified to do that. And so they may not be thinking about your product or your service at all.
Right. As a matter of fact, if they're in the C state, they aren't. And that kind of brings us to the think state. So why don't you tell us about that?
So the people that were in your C state can now move into your potentially move into your think state. And these are audience members that are qualified. So again, they have in our example, have the driver's license and have the money, but they are and they are also thinking about purchasing your product or service. They have a need, something that has happened to them. So when we talk about our car example, again, they've got their driver's license, they have the money, and something has happened to them that has made them unhappy with their current transportation system. Either they don't have one and now they need one, or maybe they had one and it broke down, or they were in an accident and it's no longer drivable, or a new car has come out with new features that they're so excited about that it is now on their radar that, hey, I'm interested in possibly looking into buying a car. Those are the people that are now in think stage.
Exactly. And the key is that they're thinking about it, but they have not made a commitment to themselves or someone else to purchase, right? Once they make a commitment to themselves or someone else to purchase, and it doesn't have to be your product that they've committed to purchase. Once they've made that commitment to purchase a product, they move into do. And so your do state is somebody who's qualified and has made a commitment to make a purchase sometime usually within a defined time frame, if not, immediately, right? They're shopping right now to buy, okay? And so in our example, I have a driver's license, I have money, and I have decided I'm going to buy a car this weekend. Now all of a sudden I move from think to do.
And then once they purchase that car, they have moved into grow. And grow is where we start to diverge from Avinash. And, I think you mentioned it earlier. He uses the fourth state or stage, as he calls it, of care. And he's defined that as extra loyal customers who've purchased the product more than once. Again, we diverge here because that gets a little bit hard. If you make someone have to purchase your product more than one time, you're ignoring people who may be satisfied customers but haven't purchased more than once. And looking back at this car example, it probably is going to be a while before I buy two cars. I may not necessarily be buying a new car every year. So to go To use Avanish's example of having to purchase more than once, I would sort of be ignored. I wouldn't be in any state until I made that second purchase. And so we diverge here. And we call this grow. We actually have broken it into two separate phases, grow and give. But the people that are in grow are those people that have purchased your product and would choose to purchase your product again. And so when we're talking about the car example, they have bought a specific brand of car. They're happy with it. And not only with their car, but also with the brand. And when they go back to make another purchase, this car or this brand is going to be on their list of considerations.
And that brings us to give. And again, coming back to Avanash's care, not necessarily being specific enough for our needs, we felt that care really neglected those customers that have moved not only into loyal purchasers, but beyond that, they're willing to evangelize your brand. They are sharing the praises of your brand with others and really generating demand. Word of mouth marketing has always been a very intangible concept in marketing, and by identifying this particular state with your audience, you're able to start to narrow in on how you can best help those people evangelize your brand for you. And so our give audience is those who not only have purchased our product, but now they are actively singing our praises to others, encouraging them to make the same purchase. So in the case, I think, Elizabeth, you have a great example when it comes to the car example here.
Yes, my father is the perfect example of a prospect in the give stage, and he is a gentleman who, for years and years and years, bought a new car every year, and then in the mid to late 90s discovered Hyundais, and ever since then he has purchased a new Hyundai every year. Has not swayed from the brand. Not only has he purchased a Hyundai, but he bought one for my mom. And all of my sisters and I all had Hyundais growing up. And anyone he meets, he talks nonstop about the value of Hyundai. And he doesn't understand why anyone would ever buy anything else ever. And it's almost to the point that it's like, okay, we got it. We've got it. Thanks for sharing. But he is the exact definition of a give prospect.
Now, does he correct people on the proper pronunciation of Hyundai?
Yeah, and I'm probably sure that I screwed that up. And so if he's listening, I'm sorry, Dad. I'm going to get a text message from him. I know it.
Well, we have a blog post out on the blog right now that really breaks down these see, think, do stages. Again, kind of reiterating what we talked about today, going a little bit more in depth. And it includes both B2B and B2C examples. So if you've been have a hard time relating our car example back to whatever it is that you're selling, then this might, the blog post might help you do that.
So before we go on, I think there's a few things that we kind of want to take a little break here and make note of. And these are things that have come up as sort of we're moving along. And I want to make sure this is clear before we move forward and get more into how we actually apply see, think, and do to our content and our media channels. And so the first thing I really want to make sure that everyone is very clear on is that you can't move people from between these states. They can only move themselves. And it's our job as marketers to create the best experience that we can for the given state while reducing the friction as they move closer and closer to purchase. But reducing friction, making that easier for them to get to purchase is much different than pulling or pushing someone towards purchase. And this is one of the biggest hurdles that we face when we're in customer journey discovery, is helping sales and in a lot of cases, marketing teams understand that we can provide the information, again, to make this as smooth of a process for our customers and for our prospects, but we cannot force them. The decision to move from see to think or from think to do or from do to grow, that lives with inside of them. They have an internal need that has to be met. And until they have decided that need has been met or that what needs to happen has happened to move them, they cannot and will not move.
And that is certainly a mind shift that we've had a very hard time working with, particularly very sales-oriented cultures and organizations where, those salespeople have been taught it's their job to herd and push people between states. And sales may have some ability to do that, but from marketing standpoint, it's actually very hard, if not impossible, to do so. The other thing that I think is really important to keep in mind when you're looking at See, Think, Do, Grow, and Give is that it's not necessarily a linear progression, right? Again, coming back to the sales team is taught that you have a funnel and you push people through your funnel and they move from awareness to interest to consideration to desire to action or whatever model you want to use. When it comes to See, Think, and Do, these are just states of being. And I think all of us can relate to times when we have gone from see, maybe even skipped think to do when we were there to make a purchase and we didn't really even spend a whole lot of time considering or thinking about it. Or when we've been in do state, we've been actively shopping for something and suddenly we realize, wait, this isn't actually within budget. I can't do it right now. Or something else means that we can't make this purchase right now. We move back into think. Or maybe all the way back out to see because we've decided that we're just not going to do this.
It's funny that you say that and that you use that definition because when we were actually purchasing our trailer, we were sitting down with finance and we were on the last page to sign it and the finance terms changed and we walked out. And that following weekend went and visited every single RV dealer in our area and ended up going with a completely different, not only brand, but a completely different vendor to purchase this from. And so we did that. We moved from See, Think, Do, and then jumped back to Think, and then went back into Do in the course of a week and a half.
It's very common. And I think as marketers, we forget that. And so the key is identifying what state is your audience member in at that particular moment. So I think now is probably a great time for us to take a quick break and go help some people. So Elizabeth, why don't we do that?
Before we continue, I'd like to take a quick moment to ask you iterative marketers a small but meaningful favor and ask that you give a few dollars to a charity that's important to one of our own. This week's charitable cause was sent in by Juan Munoz of Omni Resources in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Juan asks that you make a contribution to the Centro Legal, an organization providing free and low-cost legal resources for individuals and families in Milwaukee County. Learn more at centrolegalwisconsin.org or visit the link in the show notes. If you would like to submit your cause for consideration for our next podcast, please visit iterativmarketing.net/podcast and click the Share a Cause button. We love sharing causes that are important to you.
Well, welcome back. So before the break, we talked about See, Think, Do, Grow, and Give and broke down those different states and kind of defined them a little bit. But we really didn't get into what does this mean to you as a marketer and how can you apply this? And so I think let's take some time now and talk about how you can take See, Think, Do, and maybe even Grow and Give and apply them to your own marketing activities.
So we use this as the basis of our customer journey mapping. Even if you're not doing a full-blown customer journey map, you should still evaluate your content and media channels in context of these states of See, Think, Do, Grow, and Give. And if you're not familiar with this, we'll link to it in the show notes. We've got a great blog post back there. We have a great blog post about this, but then we also have a previous podcast that really has some great insights that we will, again, link to in the show notes.
So let's start talking about it first in the context of content. When we talk about content, we're not just talking about blog content or video content or long form content. And this comes down to the ad creative that you're creating for your display ads and basically anything that you're producing. It needs to align with that particular state for that particular audience member that you're trying to get it in front of. And so when we look at this in the context of See, here you have to keep in mind that audience member really doesn't care at all about whatever product or service you're selling because that's not on their radar at all. So now you have to make your content either something that is highly entertaining or is very valuable or informative or it provides utility, as Jay Baer likes to say, in order to make it relevant to them at that particular point in their journey.
Yeah, and to do that generally means that it has to entertain or educate them. And a great example of this is Columbia Sportswear has an app called What Not to Do, not KNOT. And it's an app for tying knots. And so it doesn't necessarily tie back to any specific product. It's not trying to sell the product, but it's useful. And it's something that hits and addresses their target audience. And so it's perfect C-stage content.
So when we talk about content in the context of think stage, here's where you have the opportunity to actually start talking about your product or service. The key is you don't want to be too salesy about your product or service at this stage, because really the prospect doesn't really need help in getting through to purchase at this point. They need information to help them decide if they're going to make a purchase and or when they're going to make a purchase, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we found a really great example, and we'll link to it in the show notes, of REI wrote a really great blog post on how to choose the best backpack. And so that's an example of content that, again, is helping somebody while they're thinking about a backpack, but isn't necessarily highlighting the features and benefits of REI's specific backpack, right?
Now, when we get into do, that's where we have the chance to get a little bit more salesy, because the people that are in do stage want to know how to buy our products or services. They have made the decision, they are ready to move forward, and we need to give them the information they need to make that happen. A really great example of content for this, and again, we'll link to the show notes, but John Deere has a product selector guide. Very easy, great user interface, and it walks you through helping you to select which is the right product for you, and then and how to go about making that purchase.
And so it's really reducing friction, giving people exactly the information that they need that helps them to justify essentially the decision to purchase your product. When we get to grow, here we're really focused on improving that user experience of your customer base, so you can better guarantee they're going to be long-term, repeat, loyal customers, so you can cross-sell, so you can upsell, so you can allow them to grow into your brand. And so here's where you're really trying to give them additional information that's going to help them better consume your product or service. And I think a great example of this is Google. If you are signed up as a Google AdWords advertiser, you'll get regular content from Google that helps you be a better advertiser, not just within the Google product, but strategically in how you can apply the Google ecosystem to your advertising and marketing efforts. I think it's a great example of how you can grow into Google. They also cross-sell and upsell their different products and services in there too, but along the way, it's actually valuable. And I know I haven't unsubscribed when I've unsubscribed to almost everything else coming into my inbox.
I actually look forward to getting mine, so they're doing a great job over there. So where grow is focused on improving the experience, give is where we are helping our evangelists talk about us, talk about our brands. And a really great example of this is Marketo Marketing Nation, where they've set it up where you can earn points as you give back to the community when you're, answering questions and responding to questions. And what that's doing is it's building a team of advocates and evangelists who, using a peer-to-peer support method, that are raving about their brand. And this is really what we're looking to do. In the give stage, we're looking to not only get them excited about it, but to give them the scripting that they need to accurately talk about our brand and portray us in the way that is aligned with our brand, so that when they have their first interaction with us, that it's aligned with what they've heard about us and who we are.
Yeah, and the same thing comes out in Marketo's events, and they have partner-specific events. They have the Purple Select program. They really do a lot to try and get their existing people who've bought into their system to go out and evangelize for it and get other people on board. And I think it's a great example of that give stage. An important thing to keep in mind, though, when you're creating content is that your audience is only ever going to be in one of these states. So when you start creating content that crosses states and you're trying to mix maybe see and think, you're essentially going to fall flat with both. There's that saying that you can please some of the people all the time, you can please all of the people some of the time, but you can't please all of the people all of the time. And I think that's definitely true when it comes to content. You want to be very careful that when you produce one piece of content, or have your creative agency produce one piece of content, that one piece of content is really only there to satisfy the needs of one particular state within that customer's journey.
In addition to satisfying their needs, though, there is another benefit to making sure that your content is focused on one state. And that is the content that your prospect is consuming is going to indicate to you which state that they are in. And this is one of the best ways to do it. If you've got someone who's interacting with a Facebook ad that is think content, then they're in the think stage. If they are filling out a form and asking that your sales team calls them, they are most likely in the do stage. And so this is really your best indication as to where your prospect is in that customer journey.
So a lot of times we'll set up a marketing automation system or other systems to go and kind of track where people are at based on the content that they're engaging in. And then if they're in Think, then we give them more Think content and maybe a little bit of Do stage content. Again, we want to reduce the friction for somebody to move into Do. And so by giving them a bulk of Think content and a little bit of Do content, we've reduced that friction. It's still their choice to go and engage with that content. We're not shoving it down their throat because we know they're in Think. We're still giving them mostly Think content, but we're greasing those skids. We are removing that friction to help them see that path into, closer to purchase. Should we talk about media channels?
Yes. So we talked about content, moving into media channels. This is where the lines get a little bit more blurred because some media channels are going to be appropriate for different states. It's not as clear cut that this content is see and think and do. When we talk to our media, when we are applying this to our media channels, we could have a media channel that's being used across all 5 of the states: see, think, do, grow, and give. And so when we take a look at the C state, again, these are people who are not thinking about us or our product or our brand. And so to get their attention, we have to interrupt their day. And the best way to do that is with interruptive and disruptive media. And what we're talking about here is Facebook ads that have compelling content that they would want to click in. Again, not product specific content, but instead something that's going to educate and entertain them.
And then your disruptive channels are going to be like your outdoor, your banner ads. These are things that are going to be sort of in the background and they're in front of you at times when you aren't necessarily looking for them. So they're still interrupting the day. But your messaging here is still going to be C stage. It's just not going to be as maybe you're just trying to get a brand impression and trying to associate something, some sort of affinity or particular aspect to that brand and convey that. It has to be a very simple message because nobody's looking for it. Nobody's going to take the time to read it. It's not like the interruptive where you're grabbing their attention.
And a few other examples of interruptive other than Facebook, TV, radio, pop-up banners. Those are all great ways to really get in front of and again, interrupt the prospect in their journey.
So when we look at Think channels, here we're going to have some overlap with our C channels. But here, really your content marketing channels are going to help you the most as far as providing content that will be valuable to somebody in Think stage, because here they're looking for content that helps them make a decision about whether or not now is the time to purchase or what they want to buy or what they're even thinking about. So here's where your blog is really going to come into play. Email starts to become relevant at this point. Facebook is another great channel at this point as well because it leads into that valuable content for somebody who's in that particular state. And your native advertising channels like your Outbrain or your Taboola also come into play, I think.
Now, when we get into Do, again, these are prospects that are ready to make the purchase. And so we still want to help facilitate the easiest process that we can for them. So we're going to use things like email marketing and CRM retargeting to really get in front of them and help them, answer any lingering questions they may have and keep our brand top of mind. But we're also going to utilize channels like pay-per-click advertising, things that are very Do-oriented. Where they're ready to make that decision.
The key is identifying that intent, that scent of intent. There are also behavioral audiences that are going to be very Do-oriented as well, because in those cases, the big data companies have gone out and identified either through predictive technology or based on other affinities, who is in market for your particular product right now. Grow and Give, this is where you're going to really want to take a look at your owned audiences because they're your customers. So you already know how to get in touch with them. Your primary channel for Grow and Give is going to be email, but that doesn't mean that you can't also target media using CRM targeting or, custom audiences on Facebook or tailored audiences on Twitter. You can actually set up your customer lists over there and also be able to deliver media to your existing customers depending on whether they're in Grow or Give and exactly what content you want to deliver.
So to wrap it up, at the end of the day, it is our job as marketers to understand which state each of our audience members is in and to deliver the best possible experience for them. And to do that, we have to understand which media channels are best to meet and address the audience in each of those states, as well as knowing which content is going to deliver the best experience and reduce the friction as they move through that customer journey.
For more information on this topic, I would suggest that you take a look at our podcast. Go back a few episodes to our podcast on mapping the customer journey. We'll link to that in the show notes, as well as the blog post by the same name. And stay tuned. We're planning some episodes of the podcast that are going to be deep dives into each one of these consideration states. So I want to thank everybody for making time for us this week. And as always, I encourage you to join us next week. And in the meantime, onward and upward.
If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube or your favorite podcast directory. If you want notes and links to resources discussed on the show, sign up to get them emailed to you each week at iterativemarketing.net. There, you'll also find the Iterative Marketing blog and our community LinkedIn group where you can share ideas and ask questions of your fellow iterative marketers. You can also follow us on Twitter. Our username is at ITER8IVE, or email us at podcast@iterativemarketing.net. The Iterative Marketing Podcast is a production of Brilliant Metrics, a consultancy helping brands and agencies rid the world of marketing waste. Our producer is Heather Ullman with transcription assistance from Emily Bechtel. Our music is by C-Stock Audio Music Production and Sound Design. You can check them out at seastockaudio.com. We'll see you next week. Until then, onward and upward.